What's up, my dudes? Got the MX Simulator Starts Guide. So, if you don't know what you should know, if you're a motocross fan, starts is the most important part to racing dirt bikes, period. There is nothing else that is as important as the start. That's just the way it's always been, and that's the way it's always gonna be. And it's super important in MX Simulator, just how it is in real life. If you don't get the start, you're putting yourself at a massive disadvantage just in a kind of a randomized type of sense. You know, if you don't get a good start, then you got to worry about everybody else around you. Whereas when you do get the start, it's almost like you get to control your fate a little bit more. And it makes a really big difference, a lot more than you would think, just not having to pass people, not having to worry about people crashing in front of you, all that little stuff. Man, it just makes a world of difference in a racing type of scenario. So, we're going to be going through everything that I've learned with starts in this game. Now, right off the bat, you've got to figure out what kind of dirt you're on, what kind of traction you're on, because there's certain tractions in this game that you can't be like full throttle and then just dump the clutch like this right here, or you're going to do that right there, okay? So you kind of just got to know what sort of tracks you're on. You start to kind of get used to usually like 1 year of nationals will have somewhat of a similar type of traction, and then a certain year of supercross tracks will have another type of traction. So like, you know, you can sit there and think in your mind, okay, I've got to not be full throttle while I'm sitting on the gate before I take off on the 13 Supercross tracks. You know, you might have to be like maybe half throttle or something like that before you come off. And then you might think in your head, okay, now the 2016 motocross tracks, I can be full throttle on the start and then just dump the clutch and it'll be okay. You know, you kind of just learn every little year of tractions and stuff like that. And if you don't know, if you're just on some random track that you don't really know, you could probably play it safe by not being just absolutely 100% wide open whop throttle before you come off the gate, right? If you don't really know what kind of traction you're coming off of. Now, if it's a sand track, you can hold that dude wide open all the way. Don't matter where you're at on the start. Don't even matter how you're leaning. Most sand tracks in this game, you can lean all the way back like this, full throttle, and dump the clutch, and the front wheel will not come up at all. So it just all kind of depends, and also your setup's going to make a big difference as far as what kind of gearing you have, you know, where you have your rider mass distribution. All that little stuff makes a massive difference on how much that bike's actually going to wheelie coming off the start there. And that's just something you kind of learn over time. You just start to kind of get this system going, and then your mind just gets used to it, and then you don't even really have to think about it. You're just taking off. You know, you don't really have to think so much about that aspect of it. But obviously you want to have your clutch set on a button that's really easy to get to, where you can still have your throttle going and still kind of have your hands in position to be able to lean properly on the bike when you actually do come off the gate. Now, as far as, do you lean forward like you would in real life before you come off the gate, or do you stay neutral? Do you lean back? All that little stuff. I mean, I guess technically I'll lean forward just to make sure that that front wheel, to just get a little bit of extra weight up towards the front, so that if it does start to come up, I can, it's not just going to instantly flip over on me, right? Like, when you're leaning on the front like that with my particular setup, like, it's not going to just come up on me unless I'm on like some kind of concrete Future SX traction or something like that. Like, it's not going to do it. It may like I may take off and then the front end starts to come up a little bit, and then if I just keep on the throttle, then it'll go all the way over, right? But it's not just going to instantly do it when I'm sitting on the front. So I've just kind of gotten in the habit of just kind of leaning forward before I take off, and it's not like I come over here and I'm leaning forward, and then as soon as I dump the clutch, I'm like leaning back, because then it's just going to do like that. I kind of just lean forward until I get, you know, pretty much to the very end of the straightaway, and then that's kind of how I do it there. Now, with starts in MX Simulator, everybody's got balls of steel, okay? So it's not going to be as much like starting in real life where you're not going to be able to read people's minds as much. No one's scared about crashing because no one's going to get hurt in a video game. So everyone's going to be wide open to that first corner. So it's a lot more random on how the start's actually going to turn out. Like, you can be the greatest rider ever in MX Simulator and still not get starts. Whereas, like, it seemed like Ricky Carmichael and some of those other dudes seemed like they got starts all the time in real life, because it's just a little bit of a different animal in real life when you actually bring in the danger aspect of it and I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain that, but with MX Simulator, everybody feels like they're James Stewart on the start. You understand what I'm saying? Where the real men get separated is once you're like 2 or 3 laps into it, but everybody feels like the man on that first start straightaway. So that's what makes it really dangerous with MX Simulator. You just have to be a little bit careful because everyone thinks that they're the fastest on the start because no one's really able to prove theirself until you get 2 or 3 laps into it or after the first lap there. So it just makes it very, very sketchy. Now, you do get a lot better at just being comfortable, like hammering it all the way to the absolute pinnacle edge of the first corner and bumping bars and doing all that all the way to the corner. That just becomes a very normal thing. I know if you have just started in this game, it could probably feel kind of scary and like really crazy and like you can't hold on to the bike and like when you're hammering the throttle and you're literally like rubbing up against 2 people on both sides of handlebars and like you cannot turn a single millimeter, like you cannot turn at all or you're going to bump into somebody. That preciseness on the starts is something that you learn after just doing millions and millions of starts, and you just kind of learn, like, you start to kind of draw this imaginary line out from the gate, out from your direct gate, and if you get a full gate of pros and they all know what they're doing, they can almost all go in the first corner without anyone going down because they know exactly where to keep that sort of straight. And when I say straight, I don't mean like perfectly ruler straight. I mean like straight with the curvature of the corner, in relation to where your gate is coming out of. So if you'll stay right on that and not budge, a lot of times people are not going to be able to crash into you unless they just like totally turn the bike sideways because you're staying in your sort of lane, if you know what I'm saying. Like, they're not going to run into you because you're in your little sector. So it's all about kind of learning exactly where that is all the way down the straightaway. Now, as far as just like the sheer takeoff portion of it, you just got to have it in your head. Like, there is a little bit of that system of you can almost like time the gate to a certain extent, but it's super random. I mean, I would say about 90% of my starts are like I'm just sitting there looking at the gate, and then when it drops, I take off. And it's not like I'm taking off like perfection, like 100% as soon as the gate drops, but I'm taking off really soon after that, right? But you can almost like time it in a sense if you're getting really ballsy, or sometimes I've just accidentally done this before where I'll just be sitting there looking at the gate, and it's almost like before it even drops, you let out on the clutch, and sometimes you get really lucky and that gate drops just in the, I'm talking, if you took off a millionth of a second later, you would hit the gate. You understand what I'm saying? Like, it is absolutely perfect. Almost like your tires are rubbing on the gate before it falls, right? So that is, you can pull that off every once in a while, but I would not use that as an actual technique. And that's kind of like in real life too. I mean, you've seen Michael Lessie do that in real life, and then he's, like pulling 5 bike links on everybody into the first corner, like some crazy start. But then the next time he goes out there and tries to do it, he runs into the gate, and then he gets dead last in the main event. It's not a very consistent way to do it, but you can get lucky on starts and like how you take off from the gate like that sometimes. So, you can kind of time it to a certain extent sometimes if you're really, really trying to get a start or whatever. But if you're trying to go just for a consistent basis, just wait till that gate drops, and as soon as it does, take off as soon as you can. You know, you got to focus on it without focusing too much on it. It's kind of how the whole gate drop thing works in this game. But yeah, I mean, as far as like gate selection, if you guys didn't know, you can actually do that in the pro racing and the amateur racing. You just go in there, you type in like server. Let me see, what do you actually type in? You type in server, and then that little what do you call that, a damn comma? You type in server, like gate. I think you just type in server like gate 5. Whoops. Obviously it's going to say not connected to a server, but here, let me do this on my server real quick. Okay, so I'm in my server. So yeah, if you want, like, obviously gate number 1 is going to be all the way to the inside, all the way to gate 40, or just 22 if it's on a supercross track. If it's on an old supercross track, it's only going to be 20 gates. Sometimes in rare occasions, you'll have, like, where gate number 1 is actually on the outside, like it's flipped, like it's opposite, especially on some custom tracks, can be like that. But yeah, you just go in there, select your gate, just like that right there, and then it'll say your gate preference is now set to 5. So basically what it does is, like, however you finished in qualifying or in your heat races, then that's going to kind of allow you to be in line for whichever gate. So let's just say you get second in your heat race, okay, and the guy in front of you obviously got first in the heat race, so he's kind of one pick ahead of you in the gate selection. Let's just say you both go in there and pick gate 5. Well, obviously he's going to get the gate, but it'll just automatically, I think what it does, this is just what I think that it does. I'm not 100% sure, but from my personal experience, I'm pretty sure this is what it does. Like, basically, like, if you both pick the same gate and he was in front of you in the ladder of how he finished in qualifying or the heat race, then you'll just get like one of the gates that's really close beside it. Like you'll either get gate 6 or 4 if he picked gate 5, if you both pick gate 5 but he's in front of you, right? So you don't actually go in there like pick gate selection in this game like you would in a MXGP game or one of those. You're really just it's kind of a guessing game. You don't really know if you're going to be able to get that gate or not. If you finish really bad in a, like if you have to go to the LCQ, you pretty much know you're going to have one of the outside gates, but you can still try to pick one of the inside gates. You might get lucky. It might just kind of put you to one of the inside ones, you know, or a middle style gate like that or whatever. But like if I've finished really bad, you know, like I got in on the LCQ or whatever, and I try to go in there and pick like gate 2 or 3 or 5, like it's not going to give it to me, right? It's not going to do it. I've never had that happen where I've like had to go through the LCQ and then I pick one of these inside gates and then somehow I'll luckily get an inside gate. That's never happened. Like you'll get like maybe a medium in the middle gate or something like that or whatever, but that's kind of how you go in there and pick your gate. So there is somewhat of importance to finishing well in qualifying and obviously in your actual heat races and stuff like that. When I say qualifying, I mean that in motocross, because there are no heat races in motocross. When you talk about supercross, it's just your gate selection for the heat races, and then how you finish in the heat races is your gate selection for the main event. But I will say this, and this kind of goes back to like what I was saying before, it's not as important in MX Simulator to have a good gate. Like, it's not as important as it is in real life. It's just not. Like I said, everybody's Rambo on the start straight. So what that does is, even if you have a gate out here in Timbuktu, like, you could take off and, I mean, you could get lucky and, you know, 10 dudes pile up on the inside, and if you just gas it way out here and just kind of keep your line, you could actually pull the whole shot from doing that in MX Simulator. Whereas in real life, that would never, ever, ever happen. You would never pull a whole shot because the crashing doesn't happen as much in real life on the starts as it does in MX Simulator. The way the collision works and how it's a video game and it's not real life, it just makes, like I said, everybody's a lot faster on the start than they really are. A lot of people try to, you know, gas it more than they really know what to do with, you know, and that kind of happens, which causes crashes and pileups, so you never know what you're going to be able to do on the start. So even if you have an outside gate, I would not just let off and try to go to the inside. You know, some people kind of get that thought in their head, like, well, I'm not going to pull the whole shot way out here, so I'll just take off, get on my brakes, and then, like, you know, gas it over here to the inside like this right here and just kind of pull in behind everybody. there's certain occasions where that can work a little bit better for you if everyone piles up, obviously, but I never think like that in my mind when I'm taking off on a gate. I never think like I'm barely going to take off and let everybody go and then try to avoid all the crashes, because it's really, even if you crash in the first corner, I mean, I think it's worth it to go for it. It's always worth it to try to go for the whole shot, no matter where you're at in the gate. I think you're better off doing that in a long-term sense, in a consistency sense, to doing that, because the amount of payoff that you'll get if you don't crash is just so many levels above the amount of payoff you would get from letting off on the right out of the gate. You know, if you let off right out of the gate like this, you'll get halfway down this straightaway and there will be like a 30-man pile up on the inside, so you won't even be able to go that way anyways. You know, it's just not like real life. That's the only way to explain it. So you might as well just go for it anytime you're on a start. You might as well pick a gate that can get a hole shot if you do get a good gate selection. You know, like, let's just say you got a really good gate selection and you go all the way up here and pick gate 1, which, if you can notice, it's really not that lined up to the actual inside of the corner. Like, you're way to the left of the inside corner. And some people would do that to, like, have a safety net in their mind, right? Like, they're not expecting to get the hole shot by picking this, but they're picking it because they don't want to be all the way at the outside. And I mean, everybody has their own techniques, but for me personally, I always pick a gate that I feel like I can actually get the hole shot in if I have that gate selection. So the sort of gate I always try to pick is, I'll try to get it to where the gate is almost like it's like, if you'll draw a line from the gate to the first corner, it's like directly to the inside. The inside SpongeBob's. You see them right there? So, like, I would pick either, like, this gate right here in front of me, or maybe one more to the inside. One of those right there, because there's nothing that's going to beat straight drive, straight line drive start, right? If you have to turn at all, then you're going to have to slow down a little bit. But if you have a straight start like this, and you get a good start, no one can beat you in that situation, you know? Some people might think to, like, let me just show you something here. So you seen how once I got into that first corner, I really had to bind up the brakes because I was all the way to the inside of the corner. Some people might think that, like, this gate out here would be better. You know, like, if you take off, then you'll have more of a, like, a kind of roll into the corner like this right here. And I just, personally, I feel like it's better to go for that where the inside of the corner starts. That's what I've always done. That's just my own personal thing. But, you know, everybody's got their own technique and style to it. And sometimes it bites me in the ass doing that. Sometimes it's good. You know, there's been times I've damn near pulled the whole shot way out here before. There's been times where you get a completely inside gate and you think there's no way you can pull a whole shot like that, and then somehow you magically do. Starts are very random. They're very, you just have no idea what's going to happen. That's what makes them fun. But so as far as, like, how you actually, after you take off, okay, let's go through that right here. So you start to sort of learn exactly how much you have to shift the bike to get into most corners out there. Like, most corners on motocross tracks are somewhat of the same distance, first corners, first start straightaways, except obviously like Glen Helen and Washougal. Those are, you know, a little bit of exceptions, but most of them kind of have this, like, where you're going to be getting in third or fourth gear, depending on your gearing, going to be somewhere around there, and you just kind of learn exactly how much to gas it into the corner, and then how much you got to get on your brakes to slide right into that corner. That becomes a very natural, comfortable thing, like you're not even having to think about that at all. So you're not really thinking in that sense. What you're thinking more about is your peripheral vision. That's going to be a big thing to starts in MX Simulator and real life. Like, if you got dudes on the left and the right of you, you know, you're taking off and you're not able to look at them if they're not directly in front of you, because you're looking at what's right in front of you. But you can see them with your peripheral vision. You can kind of get a good idea on who's got the jump coming out of the start. Like as soon as you take off, you're kind of like looking at the dudes that are directly beside you first, so that you make sure that you don't just tangle up with those dudes like 3 feet coming out of the gate. Like you want to make sure, you know, you kind of got your eyes on those guys, and if you can beat those guys out like right here, then you really can keep on the throttle all the way to the corner. But if you don't have those dudes beat, then that's when you got to kind of start thinking twice, you know. Like before you come out of the gate, you think in your head like you have that hole shot. No one else is going to beat you that first corner. They're not going to do it. There's no way they can do it. They can, you know, do whatever they want to do. They're not going to beat you that first corner. That's what your thought should be in your head when you're sitting behind this gate. Now, once you take off, stuff starts to change a little bit, okay? Just things, you might not have had as good of a jump as you thought. Something might have happened, whatever. But sometimes you're not going to be able to have that same sort of thought process once you get, you know, a few feet out of the gate. You're not going to be able to have that same thought of, okay, no one's going to beat me into that first corner, because if somebody's got a full bike link ahead of you, they're probably going to beat you into that first corner. You got to, like, get to a certain point where you just accept where you are on the start. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, you take off, you think you got the whole shot, then right here about this midpoint, you start to realize what's really going to go down in that first corner. And so then you're making these like split-second decisions of letting off, or then you've got to try to figure out like where people would be behind you, coming up behind you. Little techniques like that is things that you learn after just doing so many pro starts. You just start to kind of learn where you can like where you could slow down, let a dude kind of get in front of you that's on the inside of you, then kind of tuck in behind him. Or just like, let's just say, for instance, let me come over here and show you guys something. So let's just say you take off from like right about here, okay, and the guy on the inside of you maybe gets a little bit of a better jump and he looks like he's going to get to that first corner first. Then you can kind of break off to the outside just a little bit and kind of control that outside, right? You got a couple different techniques on that you can do, but you just want to be careful and keep the bike as straight as you possibly can for as long as you possibly can, and that will save your ass on crashing on the starts. And when I say keeping it straight, I mean keeping it perfectly straight. You have to, especially on motocross, because you're just so close to all the other riders. You know, you just have to, you got to like draw that imaginary line, like I'm saying, and keep the bike as straight as you possibly can. You don't want to do any crazy turn movements or anything like that, because that's how you get hit. And if you'll keep your bike really straight like that, like let's just say you got two dudes that really know how to do starts, and they both take off, or let's just say you got three guys, okay? Let's say I'm coming up right here in this gate. I've got one guy directly to the left of me in that gate, and one guy directly to the right of me in that gate, and we all are really good starters. Well, if we all take off and we keep our bikes pretty almost perfectly straight like you're supposed to in a pro race, we can bump bars without crashing. A lot of people wouldn't even think that you could bump bars in MX Simulator without just completely instantly falling down or getting front end locked, but you can. The thing about it is you just have to have two people that really know how to keep that bike straight and steady. It's just kind of the way it goes, but it's something you get a lot more wise on once you've done it. That's the only way to really explain starts in MX Simulator. You just have to do it to figure out how to do it, because it's not something that you can really, really accurately practice like all the time. Like you can't accurately practice doing starts with 39 other pro 450 riders in the game. You can't really do that any other time than when you're literally pro racing. You know, you can't practice that any other time. So it's going to be weird the first couple times that you do it, but once you've done a couple of pro races, it starts to get a little bit more normal, and then you start to kind of learn where your skill is in relation with some of the other riders, and then it kind of gets easier in that sense. But yeah, man, that's basically starts. You start to just kind of, you realize your different levels throughout the start with where your mind is going to change. And that's something that can take a lot of time to learn, like, you know, being fearless as soon as you come out of the gate. And then right here, you're kind of looking for everybody. And then right about that midpoint, you pretty much know, like, you get that whole shot feeling. If you think you might be able to get the whole shot, you either have that feeling or you don't have that feeling. And you guys should know what I'm talking about if you're motocross fans. That whole shot feeling of just, it's like this overwhelming feeling just comes over your body, and you're like, okay, I'm getting this whole shot. Like, you feel like, okay, I have the whole shot. It's a very, very weird feeling. You either have it or you don't have it, you know? And when you don't have it, that's when it's like the second thoughts start to hit your head, and you got to get on those brakes because somebody else is coming in hotter than you. But if you do have that whole shot feeling, man, you just got to hold it on as long as you can, you know, all the way into that corner. And then it becomes the technique of trying to, like, actually angle the bike. I mean, you can get a perfect start. Like, you can come over here, get a perfect jump. Let's say you just time the gate and you get a perfect start. You jump in front of everybody. You get all the way down here. But if you shoot out past this start straight, then somebody's going to roll up the inside of you. Right? So that's kind of how you have to learn to brake in those perfect spots, like I was telling you before, where you can sort of, it's almost like you keep that straight line all the way around the corner. And that sounds so stupid because obviously a straight line doesn't go around a corner, but it's like you kind of keep where you were on the gate to a certain extent. Let me explain it like this right here. So let's say you get a really far outside gate. Let's say you get an amazing jump and you shoot off right here. Well, you don't want to start shooting over here to this inside right away because you're going to cut everybody, you're going to cut their noses off. And odds are you're probably going to crash trying to do like that. You're probably not going to be able to do that. Even if you get a good jump from the outside, you still have to kind of hold your sort of start straight line. So, like, even if you get an amazing jump, you still want to kind of hold it to the outside a little bit. And then once you get, like, right here, then you can start kind of working in different areas. But you don't want to totally change your path on the start straight, because that's what causes you to crash. You know, you want to try to keep your path as straight as you possibly can with starts. And that's basically the most important aspect to it. But as far as, like, pulling wheelies out of the start and all that, I mean, you'll definitely accidentally do it at times, and you're going to have your clutch sitting there right beside you, obviously. Now, for me personally, when I come off of the start, obviously I'm holding on the clutch and wide open, leaning forward, then I take off. And if the bike's like starting to wheelie on me, I don't really hit the clutch, because for me in this game, I don't have it set up where the clutch is like manual. I have it just automatic. Even though I still shift, the actual clutch aspect is automatic. So, you know, I don't have to, like, shift from neutral to first and then, like, use my clutch in every corner. I don't have to do that. So the only time I really use my clutch is on the actual start straight, just so it keeps it in a good spot like that, and then just dump the clutch like that right there. And then if the bike starts to get a little bit up on you in the front end, you just kind of let off the gas, or you start to get on your brakes a little bit, and that'll bring that back down. But yeah, it's a fun thing when you can start to learn how to do starts in this game. But that's about everything to it as far as a guide sense goes. That's about everything I've learned. But yeah, man, once you get those starts, it's a different world for sure. Not having to pass a bunch of people, and I mean, it's just crazy the difference in your finishes can be just from the start that you get. I mean, there's multiple races where I've gotten really good finishes, but I crashed in the first corner, and you know, the thought always goes through your head, like, what could have been had I gotten a good start in that race. And it really does make a massive difference. I mean, you can be having the worst racing night of your life. You can feel like you're riding terrible, and all it takes is getting a good start, and then all of a sudden you feel like you're doing really good, and like you're going to have a lot better of a chance of doing good, whereas you can be feeling amazing and get a bad start, and it can completely ruin your night. So it is a big changer for sure. But once you get to a certain level, you can crash in the first corner and still get up there. I'm not saying you can crash and win, but you can still crash and get up there to the front to a certain extent if you're good at passing people. But like when you talk about, like with the pro racing, where people are just so much more consistent, the start is so much more important than it would be in like a random online server or a amateur race or something like that, it's just nowhere near as important in those type of races as it is a pro race, because the consistency level is like tenfold in the pro races. So if you don't get that start and you're stuck in the pack, it's going to be really hard to move through the pack like that. But either way, appreciate you guys watching all the videos. Later, dudes.